In this universe, heroes are brands, gods are addicts, and morality is a liability. The skyline glitters with corporate logos masquerading as hope, while below, the streets rot with the consequences of unchecked power. This is a world where cape wearers rape with impunity, murder for ratings, and serve shareholders instead of people. Every smile is rehearsed. Every rescue is staged. Every act of heroism exists only because a camera is rolling. Into this cesspool of corruption and commodified virtue steps a figure who should not exist here, a king who still believes in honor, not the hollow, focus-grouped kind that Vought markets to suburban families. Real honor, the kind forged in responsibility, tempered in legacy, and wielded like the vibranium claws that extend from his hands. His arrival isn't announced with press conferences or Instagram posts. It's marked by silence, by the sudden absence of surveillance in a 3-block radius of downtown Manhattan. The sensors go dark first. Vaught's orbital tracking systems, designed to monitor every superhuman signature on the planet, suddenly register a void. Not an absence of power, but something their algorithms can't classify. A material that doesn't exist in their databases. An energy signature that predates their understanding of enhanced abilities. In the monitoring rooms deep beneath Vought Tower, analysts stare at screens showing impossible readings. Vibranium shouldn't exist outside of fiction. Wakanda shouldn't be real. Yet here, in the heart of America's most surveilled city, stands a man wrapped in a metal their scientists can't scan, can't penetrate, can't comprehend. He moves through the neon-soaked streets like a shadow with purpose, observing a world that has perfected the art of wearing heroism as a costume while committing atrocities underneath. If you're watching this because you want to see Black Panther punch Homelander through a building, you're in the wrong place. This isn't about power scaling. It's about what happens when actual nobility meets weaponized narcissism. Before we continue this story of a king entering hell, hit that subscribe button, because tales of honor colliding with corruption are what this channel lives for. Drop a comment telling me which soup you think would break first when confronted with someone who can't be bought, threatened, or manipulated. T'Challa stands on a rooftop in Hell's Kitchen, and the city below him screams with a different kind of suffering than any he's witnessed. Not the cry of invasion or war, but the slow rot of systematic exploitation dressed in patriotic colors. His suit's sensors feed him data that turns his stomach. Compound V residue in the water supply, statistical patterns of civilian casualties around soup interventions, media manipulation algorithms designed to turn victims into villains. This isn't a world under attack. It's a world that has already lost but hasn't realized it yet because the conquerors wear capes and smile for cameras. Wakanda's intelligence network brought him here to investigate reports of a synthetic enhancement serum being weaponized. What he's found is far worse. An entire civilization that has surrendered its dignity to the altar of superhuman celebrity. He watches Homelander descend from the sky 3 blocks away, landing with calculated gentleness for the gathered crowd. The poster boy of American heroism signs autographs with one hand while his eyes, those dead, shark-like eyes, scan for threats, for challenges, for anything that might pierce the fragile shell of his superiority complex. T'Challa's suit analyzes the Supe's body language, his micro-expressions, the way his smile never reaches those eyes. The diagnostic is clear. Severe narcissistic personality disorder, compounded by God-complex delusions and complete absence of genuine empathy. This is what this world calls a hero. A damaged child in an invincible body, worshipped by millions who don't realize they're praising a predator. The King of Wakanda has faced alien invasions, interdimensional threats, and gods who actually deserve the title. None of them disturb him quite like this, the horror of a society that has normalized its own exploitation. The Panther Habit's advanced systems continue their passive scans, downloading terabytes of data from Vaught's poorly secured public networks. He learns about the Seven, about Starlight's manufactured redemption arc, about the dozens of soups who've retired after becoming inconvenient to corporate interests. He sees the pattern clearly. This world doesn't have heroes. It has products. Human-shaped merchandise programmed to perform heroism while embodying its opposite. And the truly disturbing part isn't the soups themselves. Damaged people given too much power too young, twisted by a corporation that views them as assets. The real horror is the population that accepts this, that cheers for it, that has forgotten what actual heroism looks like because Vought has spent decades redefining the word to mean whatever generates the best quarterly earnings. Movement catches his attention. 3 blocks east, a situation devil, eloping. A soup he doesn't recognize, costume gaudy with sponsor logos, confronting a young woman outside a nightclub. The body language is predatory. The woman is scared but trying not to show it, aware that resisting a soup publicly could get her labeled as anti-hero on social media. T'Challa's claws extend instinctively, but he restrains himself. Intervening now would be foolish. He doesn't understand this world's power structures yet, doesn't know which strings connect to which puppets. A king doesn't rush into battle without reconnaissance. Wakanda has survived for centuries by being smarter than its enemies, not just stronger. So he watches, he records, he catalogs this moment of casual evil, adding it to the growing database of reasons why this universe is fundamentally broken. The woman escapes, this time, and the soup flies away laughing, probably heading to another club to try again. This is the world Black Panther has entered. Not as a guest, not as an ally. The word invaded carries weight here. This is an incursion of incompatible ideologies. Wakandan philosophy holds that power is a responsibility to be wielded for the protection of the vulnerable. Here, power is a commodity to be monetized for the enrichment of shareholders. These two worldviews cannot coexist peacefully. One will have to adapt, bend, or break. T'Challa knows which one Vought expects to yield. They're used to foreign powers falling in line, used to buying compliance through economic pressure and media manipulation. They don't know that Wakanda is the most advanced and resource-rich nation on Earth, hidden behind holographic barriers and centuries of strategic isolationism. They don't know that the man in the vibranium suit isn't just some enhanced individual they can control. He's a king, and kings don't kneel to corporations. The night deepens, and somewhere in Vought Tower, an emergency meeting is beginning. Analysts are presenting impossible data to executives who don't want to hear about problems that don't have solutions in their playbook. An unknown entity with technology decades beyond their capability has appeared in their city, and they can't track him, can't identify him, can't control the narrative around him. This terrifies them in a way that even Homelander's psychotic episodes don't. Homelander they created. Homelander they can manage, manipulate, and when necessary, replace. But this is something from outside their system. Something their contingency plans never accounted for. On that distant rooftop, T'Challa doesn't smile, but satisfaction flickers through his thoughts. Let them be afraid. Fear is the beginning of respect. And before this is over, Vought International will learn what it means to face someone who cannot be corrupted, cannot be intimidated, and will not compromise. The invasion has begun, not with armies or explosions, but with the arrival of a single man who remembers what honor actually means. The conference room on the 47th floor of Vought Tower smells like expensive cologne and suppressed panic. Madeline Stillwell stands at the head of the table, her perfectly maintained composure cracking at the edges as analysts present data that shouldn't exist. An unknown, enhanced individual with technology that makes their best RD look like children's toys. No heat signature, no identifiable power source. Complete immunity to their surveillance infrastructure. The satellite footage shows only a void where a person should be, as if reality itself refuses to acknowledge his presence to their cameras. Stillwell's mind races through protocols. First contact, acquisition, containment, weaponization. Every enhanced individual they've encountered follows predictable patterns. They want fame, money, or power, usually all three. But this one hasn't made demands, hasn't revealed himself, hasn't done anything except watch. That's what terrifies her. People who watch are gathering information. Information means strategy. Strategy means this isn't random. Someone sent him. Someone with resources that rival Vought's own. 3 miles away, T'Challa sits in a safe house he's established in an abandoned building scheduled for demolition. The location is perfect, overlooked, unremarkable, and according to city records, already slated for destruction in 2 weeks. No one looks twice at condemned property. His suit interfaces with Wakandan satellites orbiting overhead, creating a secure communication channel that Vought signals intelligence can't penetrate. The data streams in: financial records, corporate structures, medical experiments, legal loopholes that allow supes to commit crimes with impunity. Every file deepens his disgust. Wakanda built its civilization on the principle that advanced power demands advanced responsibility. The vibranium meteor that struck his homeland millennia ago could have made his ancestors conquerors. Instead, they became protectors. They hid their strength not from weakness, but from wisdom, understanding that revealing such power would make the world either covet it or fear it. This world chose differently. It weaponized its miracles and sold them to the highest bidder. The philosophical gap between Wakanda and Vought isn't just wide, it's a chasm so deep that no bridge could span it. In Wakanda, the Black Panther serves the people. The king is chosen not by birthright alone, but by trial and worthiness. Any citizen can challenge for the throne, ensuring that power never stagnates into entitlement. The heart-shaped herb that grants enhanced abilities is sacred, a gift from Bast that demands humility and sacrifice from those who consume it. Here, Compound 5 is injected into babies without consent, creating superhumans who are raised as corporate assets from birth. They're not taught responsibility. They're taught branding. Not humility, marketability. Not sacrifice, profit maximization. The 7 aren't warriors or protectors. They're performers. Living advertisements for a product that Vought controls completely. T'Challa has fought many enemies in his life, but he's never encountered a system quite this perverse. At least tyrants are honest about their tyranny. His suit's AI, a sophisticated Wakandan program named Shuri after his sister who designed it, alerts him to movement outside. Not threats, victims. A group of homeless people are being forcibly relocated by police, their belongings thrown into garbage trucks while officers cite city ordinances about public camping. Standard urban cruelty, except for one detail. This block is being cleared for a Vought-sponsored development project. Luxury condos marketed as hero-adjacent living. The corporation doesn't just exploit superhumans, it weaponizes them to justify gentrification. T'Challa watches through the cracked window as an elderly man pleads with officers, explaining he has nowhere else to go. The response is batons and zip ties. No Supe arrives to help. Why would they? There's no camera crew here. No brand value in protecting the people this society has deemed disposable. This is the rot beneath the cape. The bodies buried under the glittering facade of heroism. He could intervene. A single thought would activate his suit's offensive systems. He could disable every officer within a 3-block radius without causing permanent harm, give these people time to gather their belongings and relocate safely. But intervention now would reveal his presence, and he's not ready for that confrontation yet. A king must be strategic. Wakanda has survived by choosing its battles carefully, by striking only when victory serves a greater purpose than immediate satisfaction. So he watches, and he remembers, and he adds this moment to the ledger of crimes that will eventually demand accounting. The difference between a warrior and a strategist is patience. The difference between justice and revenge is timing. T'Challa has both in abundance. Vought will learn this, but not yet. Not until he fully understands the enemy he's facing. Not until he's identified every vulnerability in their armor. Back in Vought Tower, Ashley Barrett, head of talent relations and professional anxiety disorder personified, is having the worst day of her career. Stillwell has tasked her with developing a contact protocol for the unknown enhanced individual. How do you reach out to someone you can't find? How do you brand someone you can't identify? How do you control someone who clearly doesn't want to be controlled? She's drafting press releases for scenarios that might never happen, preparing contingencies for a threat they don't understand. Her assistant suggests they leak the mystery to select media outlets, create public pressure for the unknown Supe to reveal himself. Ashley almost fires her on the spot. Creating public awareness of a powerful entity they can't control is how you start mass panic. Vought's entire business model depends on the illusion of control. Admitting there's someone out there with abilities they can't explain or manage would shatter that illusion completely. Meanwhile, Homelander is in his penthouse apartment watching news coverage of himself saving a bus full of school children, an incident that happened 3 months ago but still generates solid ratings when replayed. He's barely paying attention to the screen. His super hearing has picked up fragments of the emergency meeting happening 7 floors below. Unknown enhanced individual, advanced technology, complete surveillance blackout. The words trigger something in him, not fear exactly, but a feeling uncomfortably close to it. There's someone in his city with powers the scientists can't explain, someone who hasn't come to worship him or challenge him or acknowledge his existence at all. That last part bothers him most. Everyone acknowledges Homelander. Everyone knows he's the strongest, the best, the most powerful being on the planet. The fact that this unknown entity hasn't even bothered to introduce himself feels like disrespect, like dismissal. Homelander's jaw clenches. His eyes flicker red for just a moment. Whoever this is, they'll learn soon enough. This is his world, his city, his sky. The sun sets over New York, painting the skyline in shades of orange and red that look almost apocalyptic through the city's pollution. T'Challa stands and stretches, his body moving through combat forms that are older than any martial art this world recognizes. Wakandan combat technique refined over centuries, designed to turn vibranium's energy-absorbing properties into both shield and weapon. As he moves, he thinks about the challenge ahead. Vought is powerful, but power without wisdom is fragile. They've built an empire on lies, exploitation, and the worship of damaged demigods. Empires like that don't fall to external force. They collapse from internal rot. His job isn't to destroy Vought. It's to expose what they've built, to show this world what it's become, to hold up a mirror to a society that has forgotten what actual heroism looks like. He's not here to conquer. He's here to remind them what they've lost, what they've traded for the illusion of safety, what they've sacrificed at the altar of corporate-sponsored salvation. The question isn't whether Vought will try to control him. They will. The question is what happens when they realize he can't be controlled, can't be bought, and won't be intimidated. When an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, something has to break. T'Challa intends to make sure it's not him. The first contact comes not with soldiers or soups, but with a smile. 24 hours after the emergency meeting, a carefully curated team arrives at locations across the city where Vought's predictive algorithms suggest the unknown entity might appear. They're not security. They're talent scouts. Young, attractive, impeccably dressed corporate representatives armed with contracts, signing bonuses, and the kind of enthusiasm that only comes from commission-based compensation. Their instructions are clear. Make contact, establish rapport, and above all, get him into a room where the real negotiations can begin. Vought has done this 1,000 times. Find enhanced individuals before they understand their market value, dazzle them with money and fame, and lock them into contracts that ensure the company owns everything from their image rights to their goddamn DNA. It's worked on everyone from C-list soups to the Seven themselves. They have no reason to believe it won't work now. They're about to learn a very expensive lesson about assumptions. T'Challa encounters the first scout in Central Park, where he's been observing a memorial for victims of a soup incident that Vought successfully buried in the news cycle. The woman approaches with practiced casualness, her smile bright enough to sell toothpaste. She introduces herself as a talent representative, mentions she's been looking for him, which is a lie since she has no idea who he is, and explains that Vought International would love to discuss exciting opportunities for someone with your unique skill set. The script is smooth, rehearsed, designed to appeal to vanity and ambition. She talks about endorsement deals, media appearances, a place on one of their premier superhero teams. Partnership, she calls it, like they're equals sitting down to negotiate mutually beneficial terms. T'Challa lets her finish her pitch. Politeness costs nothing, and her desperation tells him more than her words. Vought is rattled. Good. His response is a single sentence delivered in a tone that carries the weight of 5,000 years of unbroken civilization. I am not for sale. The woman's smile freezes, her training momentarily failing as she processes rejection, a response her playbook didn't prepare her for. She recovers quickly, pivoting to the backup approach, veiled threats disguised as friendly warnings. Operating without VOT authorization can be complicated, she explains. There are regulatory frameworks, public safety concerns, legal liabilities. Working within the system is so much easier than fighting against it. T'Challa's expression doesn't change behind his mask, but his silence communicates everything. She's not negotiating with some desperate enhanced individual looking for a break. She's addressing a sovereign ruler who represents a nation these people don't even know exists. The power dynamic she's assuming simply doesn't apply here. After an uncomfortable pause, she hands him a business card and leaves, her confident stride undermined by the subtle tension in her shoulders. She knows she failed. Worse, she knows she was out of her depth from the first word. Within hours, the approach changes. If gentle recruitment won't work, Vought pivots to Plan B, forced cooperation through social pressure. Their media machine, the same apparatus that can turn monsters into heroes and heroes into villains with a single news cycle, begins its work. Subtle at first, questions on talk shows about unregistered enhanced individuals. Think pieces about the dangers of vigilantism. News segments discussing the importance of Supe oversight and accountability. No mention of T'Challa specifically yet, but the groundwork is being laid. They're preparing the narrative space for his vilification. If he won't join them willingly, they'll make his existence outside their control seem dangerous, irresponsible, un-American. It's a playbook they've perfected over decades. Shape public opinion first, then use that manufactured consensus to justify whatever action you want to take. Turn the population into your weapon, make the victim complicit in their own destruction. T'Challa watches this unfold from his safe house, his suit's AI cataloging every article, every segment, every calculated piece of propaganda. Shuri's analysis confirms what he already knows. This is warfare by other means. Wakanda has seen empires rise and fall, watched colonizers justify their atrocities with carefully constructed narratives about civilization and savagery. The tactics haven't changed, only the medium, where colonial powers once used newspapers and radio to dehumanize their targets. Vought uses social media and 24-hour news networks. The underlying strategy is identical. Control the story, and you control reality itself. But there's a flaw in their approach. Vought's manipulation works on people who crave public approval, who need the crowd's adoration to feel validated. T'Challa doesn't care what Americans think of him. He's not here for their approval. He's here for their liberation, whether they realize they need it or not. The psychological assault escalates when The Deep, Vought's aquatic-themed soup and resident sexual predator, makes a public statement about dangerous unknowns threatening the fabric of hero culture. The irony would be funny if it weren't so disgusting. A man who's assaulted dozens of women, protected by NDAs and corporate lawyers lecturing about responsibility. But that's the genius of Vought's system. They don't need their spokespeople to be good people. They just need them to be popular people. The Deep's millions of followers don't know about his crimes. Vought made sure of that. All they see is a hero expressing concern about public safety. The comments flood in. Thousands of people agreeing that unregistered soups are dangerous, that real heroes work within the system, that anyone operating outside Vought's oversight must have something to hide. T'Challa reads these comments with growing understanding. This population isn't stupid. They're conditioned, trained over years to equate heroism with corporate branding, to trust Vought more than their own judgment. A-Train adds his voice next, posting a video between lines of Compound 5 about how real heroes don't hide in shadows. The hypocrisy is almost artistic. A drug-addicted speedster who's literally killed innocent people through negligent superhuman conduct, preaching about accountability. But the message isn't aimed at T'Challa. It's aimed at the population, slowly turning public sentiment against an entity they've never seen but are being taught to fear. This is how Vought fights enemies it can't physically defeat. They don't send Homelander to obliterate threats. That's messy, unpredictable, hard to control. They send the media machine to destroy reputations first, to make the target radioactive in the court of public opinion. By the time physical confrontation becomes necessary, the population is already prime. and to see it as justified self-defense. Even the victims cheer for their own oppression. T'Challa has seen this before in the nations that tried to colonize Africa, in the systems that justified slavery and apartheid through manufactured consensus. Evil doesn't announce itself as evil. It dresses up as safety, as order, as the responsible choice. The pivot happens on a Tuesday morning when 3 Wakandan scientists are detained at JFK Airport. They'd arrived on legitimate visas for a United Nations technology summit, carrying nothing more suspicious than encrypted tablets and credentials that should have granted them diplomatic immunity. But Vought's intelligence network, aided by friends in Homeland Security, flagged their entry. The detention is technically legal, buried under layers of post-9/11 security legislation that allows indefinite holding of foreign nationals suspected of threatening national interests. The scientists are separated, questioned, their equipment confiscated for routine inspection that will conveniently take weeks to complete. It's a message. Vought knows about Wakanda now. They've connected the dots between the unknown enhanced individual and the mysterious African nation that appears on maps but never quite seems to exist in international discourse. They're applying pressure, demonstrating reach, showing that they can touch T'Challa's people even if they can't touch him directly. It's a miscalculation that will cost them everything. T'Challa receives the news through encrypted Wakandan channels, and for the first time since arriving in this corrupted universe, he feels genuine anger rather than disgust. Attacking him is one thing. He chose this mission, accepted its risks. But his people, scientists on a diplomatic mission, detained as bargaining chips in a conflict they didn't start? That crosses a line Vought doesn't understand exists. In Wakanda, the king's first duty is to his people. Not to ideology, not to personal honor, but to the citizens who place their trust in his protection. Every Wakandan detained is a failure of that sacred responsibility. Vought thinks they're playing corporate hardball, applying standard leverage tactics. They don't realize they've just declared war on a nation that has spent millennia perfecting the art of striking back at enemies who underestimate them. The gloves come off, not dramatically, not with announcements or threats, but definitively. Within 6 hours, Wakandan intelligence operatives embedded in 12 countries simultaneously release a data dump that makes WikiLeaks look like a pamphlet. Vought's internal communications, financial records showing systematic fraud, medical experiment logs detailing compound vibe tests on unwilling subjects, video footage of soups committing crimes that were covered up, names, dates, bank accounts, offshore holdings, blackmail materials, everything. The information floods the internet through channels designed to be untraceable, hitting every major news outlet, activist organization, and government watchdog simultaneously. Vought's PR team scrambles to contain it, screaming about foreign disinformation and cyber terrorism, but the documents are too detailed, too specific, too thoroughly cross-referenced to be dismissed as forgeries. Even Vought's bought and paid-for media allies have to acknowledge the story because ignoring it would destroy their credibility more than reporting it. The corporation that built an empire on controlling information suddenly loses control of its own narrative. The irony is exquisite. Ashley Barrett has a panic attack in her office as the news breaks. Her carefully constructed crisis management protocols are useless against this. You can't spin away documentation this comprehensive. You can't distract from evidence this damning. She watches news anchors she personally cultivated, journalists whose mortgages Vought pays, turning against the company because staying loyal would mean professional suicide. The talking points she distributes are ignored. The damage control interviews she schedules get canceled. For the first time in her career at Vought, she's watching the machine break down in real time, and there's nothing she can do except witness the collapse. Her phone rings constantly. Angry soups demanding to know if the leaked information about their crimes is accurate, terrified executives trying to move assets before federal investigations begin, lawyers screaming about discovery processes in congressional hearings. The careful structure of lies that held Vought together is fracturing, and everyone inside can feel the building starting to fall. Homelander's response is predictably violent but strategically useless. He flies to the detention center holding the Wakandan scientists and demands they tell him where their king is hiding. When they refuse, calmly, without fear, because Wakandan citizens are trained from childhood to resist interrogation, His eyes glow red, but he doesn't fire. Can't fire. Because cameras are everywhere now. Because the leaks have made him radioactive. Because killing foreign diplomats on American soil would trigger an international incident even Vought can't cover up. He's trapped by the same surveillance state he once dominated. The scientists watch him with something close to pity. They see what T'Challa saw immediately: a broken child in an adult's body, powerful beyond measure but controlled completely by his need for approval. Homelander storms out, shattering windows with sonic booms, impotent rage radiating from every movement. For the first time in his life, his power means nothing because the rules have changed, and he doesn't know how to fight an enemy who won't meet him in the sky. The media narrative flips overnight. Yesterday's dangerous vigilante becomes today's whistleblower. Investigative journalists who ignored Vought's crimes for years suddenly discover their conscience, penning exposés about corporate corruption and superhuman immunity. Politicians who took Vought's campaign donations scramble to distance themselves, calling for investigations and oversight. The Deep deletes his earlier statement about dangerous unknowns. A-Train goes silent on social media. Even Starlight, the supposed moral center of the Seven, releases a carefully worded statement expressing shock at revelations she absolutely knew about, but chose to ignore. The population that worshipped Supes 48 hours ago now turns on them with the same mindless fervor they previously directed at worship. But no nuance, no consideration of complexity, just rage redirected from one target to another, still controlled by narrative instead of truth. T'Challa watches this reversal with no satisfaction. They haven't learned anything. They've just found new villains to hate while remaining the same gullible audience that made Vought possible in the first place. But the data dump accomplishes one critical objective. It forces Vought to release the detained scientists. Holding them becomes untenable when every human rights organization on the planet is suddenly paying attention. The scientists are quietly deported, not freed but expelled, and return to Wakanda with stories of their interrogation. T'Challa debriefs them personally, his guilt sharp despite the successful outcome. He put them at risk. His mission endangered his people. That's unacceptable, regardless of results. They reassure him with typical Wakandan stoicism. They volunteered for international service knowing the risks, trust their king's judgment, and consider the mission a success given Vought's current chaos. Still, the weight settles on his shoulders. This is what Vought doesn't understand about him. Homelander sees people as props in his personal drama. The Seven see civilians as audience members. Even Starlight, for all her supposed goodness, ultimately serves her own redemption arc. T'Challa sees every person as a responsibility. Every life matters equally, whether they're Wakandan royalty or New York homeless. That's why he'll win. Not because he's stronger, but because he actually cares about the outcome. The public encounter happens in Times Square at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and it's not planned by either side. T'Challa is tracking a Compound 5 distribution network, low-level dealers selling diluted versions of the serum to desperate people chasing superhuman dreams they can't afford. The operation leads him to a storefront pharmacy that's a front for Vought's black market testing program. People pay for powers. Most die. The survivors become unwitting test subjects for formula refinements. It's efficient, profit-generating human experimentation disguised as street-level crime that Vought can publicly condemn while privately harvesting data from. He's gathering evidence, his suit's sensors cataloging chemical signatures and digital transactions when Homelander arrives. Not by coincidence. Vought's been monitoring unusual activity patterns, and their golden boy was in the area for a staged photo opportunity. The meeting is inevitable, accidental, and about to become the most watched piece of footage in internet history. Tourists have their phones out before the first word is spoken. Homelander lands with his trademark theatrical flourish, cape billowing an artificially generated wind from his descent. He's smiling, but it's the smile of a predator who's finally cornered prey that's been evading him. "So, you're the guy causing all this trouble," he says, voice carrying that performative friendliness that doesn't reach his cold blue eyes. "Thought it was time we had a chat. Hero to hero." The word hero is a test, bait to see if T'Challa will claim the title or deny it. Instead, The Wakandan king simply stands, emerging from the shadows of the storefront in full Panther habit regalia. The vibranium suit seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, making him appear less like a man in armor and more like a living void shaped into human form. Homelander's smile tightens. He expected deference, fear, or at least acknowledgement of his superiority. What he gets is silence, assessment, the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated and found wanting by someone who isn't impressed by red capes and laser eyes. "You've been making a lot of noise," Homelander continues, his tone hardening. "Leaking classified information, interfering with American security operations. That's not how things work here. We have rules, systems. You want to be a hero in this country, you do it through proper channels." T'Challa's response comes in a voice filtered through his mask, carrying the accent of a nation Homelander has never heard of. "I am not here to be a hero. I am here because your systems have failed your people so completely that someone had to intervene." The words land like physical blows. Homelander's eye twitches. Nobody talks to him like that. Nobody suggests that anything in this country is broken, especially not its greatest defender. "Failed?" His laugh is forced, aggressive. "We've saved millions. The Seven have the highest approval ratings in superhero history. We're what keeps this nation safe." T'Challa's head tilts slightly. "Safe from what? The threats you create? The disasters you stage? The enemies you manufacture to justify your existence?" The crowd has grown now, hundreds of phones pointed at the confrontation. This is streaming live across every platform. Vought's PR team is screaming into headsets, but there's no stopping this. Homelander can feel the eyes on him, the judgment, the expectation. He's supposed to dominate this conversation, supposed to put this uppity foreign vigilante in his place with superior American confidence. Instead, he's being dissected by someone who speaks about the Seven the way you'd discuss a broken appliance. "You don't know what you're talking about," Homelander says, his voice rising. "You come to our country, leak our secrets, spread lies about heroes who've dedicated their lives to—" T'Challa interrupts with 3 words that will trend worldwide within minutes. "Prove me wrong." The challenge is simple, direct, impossible to deflect. If Vought and the Seven are legitimate, if their heroism is real, then evidence should support that claim. But Homelander can't prove it because the evidence, the real evidence, not the manufactured PR materials, is what T'Challa leaked. The silence stretches. Homelander's fists clench. What happens next occurs in less than 3 seconds, but will be analyzed frame by millions. Homelander's eyes glow red, not the controlled crimson of calculated intimidation, but the bright, furious scarlet of a man whose ego has been shattered in public. He fires. Full power, the Kimian bond of heat vision that can slice through reinforced steel, melt tank armor, incinerate humans before they have time to scream. The beams hit T'Challa's center mass, and the world holds its breath. Except the Panther doesn't incinerate, doesn't stagger, doesn't even move. The vibranium weave of his suit absorbs the energy, distributing it across the molecular structure of the armor, storing it. Physics that shouldn't be possible, but are, because Wakandan science operates on principles Vought's researchers can't comprehend. When Homelander's eyes finally dim, confusion replacing rage, T'Challa is still standing, unharmed. The crowd erupts in shocked gasps and screams. Homelander just tried to murder someone in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses, and failed, publicly, spectacularly, completely. T'Challa doesn't counterattack, doesn't need to. The damage is done. Homelander's invincibility was his identity. Being the strongest, the most powerful, the apex predator of the superhuman food chain. That identity just shattered against vibranium armor. "You attempted to kill me," T'Challa says, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "In front of witnesses, in the middle of a city, because I questioned your legitimacy. Thank you for proving my point more effectively than I could have." Homelander's face cycles through emotions: shock, rage, humiliation, fear. He's never been challenged like this, never met something his powers couldn't destroy. The tactical part of his brain screams that he should leave, regroup, reassess. But the damaged child inside can't accept this. Can't let this foreign nobody stand there unharmed after tanking his best shot. He lunges forward, superhuman speed and strength combined, fist aimed at T'Challa's head. The Panther sidesteps with fluid grace, lets Homelander's momentum carry him past, and delivers a vibranium-enhanced strike to the soup's ribs that sends him crashing through a storefront window. The crowd scatters. Police sirens wail in the distance. Homelander emerges from the wreckage, and for the first time in his life he looks uncertain. He's been hurt before. Soldier Boy managed it. Maeve landed blows that stung, but never like this. Never by someone who moves like a normal human but hits like a god. T'Challa stands in ready position, claws extended, every line of his body communicating that he's a trained warrior, not a brawler with superpowers. "This doesn't have to continue," the Panther says. "Walk away, return to your tower, reconsider your choices." It's genuine mercy, offered to someone who tried to commit murder 30 seconds ago. Homelander should take it, should recognize that he's outmatched tactically even, if the strength comparison is still uncertain. But narcissists can't accept defeat, especially public defeat. He roars and attacks again. This time T'Challa doesn't just dodge, he fights. Wakandan combat techniques honed over lifetimes, enhanced by the heart-shaped herb and amplified by vibranium technology. Every strike is precise, targeting nerve clusters and pressure points that exist even in enhanced physiology. Homelander is stronger, faster, functionally invulnerable. But T'Challa is a master warrior facing an untrained brawler who's never had to actually learn to fight because raw power always won. The mismatch is obvious. The battle lasts 90 seconds. 90 seconds that will be replayed millions of times, broken down by tactical analysts, turned into memes and viral clips and cultural moments. Homelander lands maybe 3 hits, each one absorbed by vibranium that was designed to withstand forces that make his strength look quaint. T'Challa lands 17 precise strikes, each one targeting structural weaknesses in Homelander's technique, exploiting openings that a trained fighter would never leave exposed. The final exchange ends with Homelander on his knees, breathing hard, blood trickling from his nose, proof that he can bleed, that he's not invincible, that the god myth Vought built around him is just marketing. T'Challa stands over him, claws retracted. "You are not my enemy," he says quietly, meant only for Homelander's ears. "You are their victim. The difference is, you have the power to end your victimhood and choose not to." Then he's gone, disappearing into the urban maze with speed that seems impossible for someone without superpowers. Leaving Homelander kneeling in Times Square, surrounded by cameras, bleeding and beaten and humiliated in a way that no amount of PR spin can erase. The world just watched their greatest hero lose. And worse, they watched him try to commit murder and fail. Vought's golden boy is tarnished, and there's no polishing this away. The footage goes viral within minutes, but viral doesn't capture the scale. This is a cultural earthquake. Within an hour, the Times Square confrontation has been viewed 200 million times across platforms. News networks abandon their scheduled programming to run the clip on loop, broadcasting Homelander's defeat to every screen in America. International media picks it up immediately, the moment America's invincible superhero tried to murder someone in public and failed spectacularly. Tech companies' algorithms can't suppress it fast enough. Every attempt to remove videos under violence guidelines just spawns 1,000 more uploads. People are downloading it, mirroring it, archiving it in formats designed to survive deletion. This isn't just news. This is the documentation of a mythology dying in real time. The image of Homelander kneeling, bleeding, beaten by someone in a black suit most Americans have never seen before. It becomes the defining photograph of a generation. The God King of American heroism reduced to a wounded, defeated man on his knees. Vought Tower transforms into a pressure cooker of panic and desperation. Every department is in crisis mode, but there's no protocol for this. Their entire business model depends on Homelander's perceived invincibility. He's not just their strongest asset, he's the foundation myth everything else builds on. If Homelander can lose, if he can be hurt, if he can be beaten in public by an unknown entity, then what does that say about the Seven? About Vought's ability to protect anyone? Stillwell is on her fourth crisis call, fielding questions from board members who are watching stock prices crater in real time. Investors are demanding explanations. Government liaisons are asking how this happened under Vought's watch. International partners are questioning American superhuman supremacy. Ashley has locked herself in her office, hyperventilating into a paper bag while her assistants field hundreds of media requests for comment. Every prepared statement sounds hollow against the reality of that footage. You can't spin away video evidence watched by half the planet. The public reaction is visceral and immediate, but it splits along fracture lines that were always there, just hidden beneath Vought's carefully maintained facade. One faction sees Homelander's attack as attempted murder and demands his arrest. The man fired deadly force at an unarmed individual in public, regardless of outcome. Another faction, still clinging to the mythology, claims the footage is fake, deep-faked, a conspiracy by foreign powers to undermine American heroes. But the largest group? They're simply confused. Years of conditioning told them Homelander was invincible, righteous, the ultimate protector. Watching him lose, watching him try to kill someone for asking questions, breaks something fundamental in their worldview. Social media explodes with debates, conspiracy theories, calls for accountability. The Vought-friendly influencers who usually defend the Seven are conspicuously silent, recognizing that defending attempted murder would destroy their own credibility. For the first time in Vought's corporate history, they've lost control of the narrative completely. The truth is out there, unfiltered, and it's uglier than anything their PR machine can repackage. Homelander sits in his penthouse apartment, and he's not okay. His hands shake. His vision blurs. The psychological damage is worse than the physical. He's been hurt before. His fight with Soldier Boy proved he could bleed, but never like this. Never publicly, never so completely. He replays the encounter in his mind, searching for the moment it went wrong. He had every advantage: strength, speed, flight, heat vision, invulnerability. The other guy was just a man in a suit, just human, except he wasn't. That suit absorbed full-power heat vision without damage. Those strikes hurt in ways Homelander didn't know he could hurt. And worst of all, the way that man looked at him, not with fear or awe, but with pity, like Homelander was pathetic, broken, a victim. The word echoes in his head. You have the power to end your victimhood and choose not to. What does that even mean? He's not a victim. He's Homelander. He's the strongest. He's bleeding from his nose still, trembling in his apartment, afraid to go outside because everyone saw him lose. Stillwell enters without knocking, her composure a brittle shell over barely contained fury. "What the hell were you thinking?" she demands, her usual manipulative sweetness abandoned. Homelander doesn't respond. Can't respond. She continues, voice rising. "You attacked someone in public, in Times Square, in front of hundreds of witnesses and cameras. You tried to murder a man for questioning you, and then you lost the fight. Do you understand what you've done to this company? To your image? To everything we've built?" Her words wash over him like white noise. He's not listening. He's remembering the feeling of being outmatched, outthought, made to look like an amateur by someone who moved like a dancer and struck like a god. Stillwell realizes she's not getting through. She switches tactics, her voice softening into the manipulative maternal tone that usually works. "We can fix this," she says, "but you have to do exactly what I say. No public appearances, no statements. We'll craft a narrative about foreign interference, enhanced weapons technology, temporary disorientation from a new form of attack. We can salvage this." Homelander finally looks at her, and she sees something in his eyes that terrifies her, not rage, emptiness, the look of a person whose entire identity just collapsed. The rest of the Seven are in their own states of crisis. A-Train is already planning his exit strategy, recognizing that Vought's stock is about to plummet and he needs to secure his assets before the company implodes. The Deep is spiraling into deeper substance abuse, terrified that if Homelander, the most powerful of them, can be beaten, then what protection does he have? Starlight is experiencing something close to vindication mixed with horror. She always knew Homelander was a monster, but seeing him exposed like this, watching his mythology shatter in real time, it's satisfying and terrifying simultaneously. Because if the public can turn on Homelander this quickly, they can turn on any of them. Maeve, locked in her apartment with bottles of vodka, watches the footage repeatedly and feels something she hasn't felt in years. Hope. If Homelander can be hurt, if he can be beaten, then maybe, just maybe, someone can actually stop him before he does something truly catastrophic. She doesn't know who the man in the black suit is, but she's silently rooting for him in a way she'd never admit out loud. T'Challa watches the fallout from a new safe house in Brooklyn, and he feels no triumph, only weight. He didn't want this confrontation, didn't plan to humiliate Homelander publicly or destroy Vought's carefully constructed mythology in front of millions, but the encounter was inevitable, and he responded as he was trained, neutralizing the threat with minimal necessary force. What disturbs him is how easily it happened. Homelander is functionally invincible by this world's standards, possesses abilities that would challenge even enhanced Wakandan warriors, and yet he fights like a child throwing a tantrum. No discipline, no strategy, just raw power applied with no technique. It's sad more than anything. T'Challa recognizes what he saw in Homelander's eyes during those final moments. It's a broken person who never learned to be anything except powerful. Vought created a weapon and called it a hero, gave it godlike abilities without teaching it wisdom, compassion, or restraint. And now that weapon is malfunctioning, realizing for the first time that power alone isn't enough. The tragedy isn't that Homelander lost. It's that he was designed to lose eventually, and nobody who created him cared enough to prevent it. But sympathy doesn't change tactical reality. The confrontation accelerated everything. Vought knows T'Challa is a direct threat now, not just a nuisance to be managed, but an existential challenge to their entire operation. They'll escalate. They'll bring resources to bear that make the previous attempts at control look gentle, and they'll do it while wounded, desperate, which makes them more dangerous, not less. Cornered animals bite hardest. T'Challa has studied enough revolutions to know this is the inflection point. The moment when systemic collapse becomes possible, but also when the system fights back with everything it has left to preserve itself. People are questioning the Seven now, questioning Vought, questioning the entire structure of corporatized heroism. But questions aren't change. Awareness isn't action. This population has been conditioned for so long to trust Vought, to worship soups, to accept this system as normal that one viral video won't break them free. It's a crack in the foundation, significant, but not fatal. The real test comes next, whether that crack spreads or gets sealed over by new propaganda, new lies, new distractions. The war isn't won, it's barely started, and T'Challa knows the next phase will be bloodier than anything that's come before, because Vought is done playing nice, done trying to recruit him or control him through social pressure. Now they'll try to destroy him, and in their desperation, they'll reveal exactly how monstrous they truly are. Vought's counterattack begins not with soups or soldiers, but with something far more insidious: legislation. Within 72 hours of the Times Square incident, 3 senators, all recipients of substantial Vought campaign contributions, introduced the Enhanced Foreign Operative Registration Act. The bill is rushed through committee hearings with suspicious speed, packaged as a national security measure to protect American citizens from unaccountable foreign enhanced individuals operating on U.S. soil. The language is deliberately vague, broad enough to criminalize T'Challa's mere presence while technically applying to any superhuman without American citizenship. News networks that previously questioned Vought now pivot to covering the foreign threat. Interviews with security experts who warn about the dangers of allowing unregulated powers to operate in American cities. The propaganda is masterful. They've transformed T'Challa from whistleblower to invader, from truth-teller to terrorist. And because most Americans never learned to distinguish between patriotism and corporate interest, the narrative takes hold. Fear is always easier to sell than truth. The bill passes the Senate in a closed-door emergency session, justified by invoking post-9/11 security provisions that allow expedited legislation during perceived threats. Constitutional scholars scream about due process violations, about the dangerous precedent of criminalizing individuals based on nationality rather than actions. Civil rights organizations file immediate challenges, but legal processes take months while enforcement happens immediately. Federal agencies are granted broad powers to detain, interrogate, or neutralize any enhanced individual matching T'Challa's description. The definition of matching is left intentionally vague, basically anyone in dark tactical gear operating without Vought authorization, which means Vought now has legal backing to hunt the Panther with government resources. They've weaponized democracy itself, turned the mechanisms meant to protect citizens into tools of oppression. T'Challa reads the legislation from his safe house, and a grim recognition settles over him. This is colonialism wearing a new mask. The same tactics used to justify conquering nations, extracting resources, destroying cultures, all dressed up as security and protection and law. The human cost manifests quickly. A 19-year-old black kid in Baltimore wearing a homemade superhero costume, completely powerless, just a comic book fan doing neighborhood cleanup, gets detained by federal agents responding to reports of suspicious enhanced activity. He's held for 16 hours, interrogated without a lawyer present, released with no charges but a warning that vigilante activity won't be tolerated. In Los Angeles, 3 activists organizing protests against Vought are arrested under the new law's broad conspiracy provisions. Their crime? Communicating with encrypted apps, just like T'Challa might use. In Detroit, an actual enhanced individual with minor telekinetic abilities, registered, legal, never committed any crime, gets raided by federal agents who claim they're investigating foreign connections. His apartment is destroyed, his life savings confiscated. He's released after they find nothing, but the message is clear. Step out of line, question the system, and we'll destroy you legally. The legislation isn't about security, it's about terror, about demonstrating that challenging Vought carries consequences that extend beyond the individual to anyone who might support them. Starlight watches this unfold from inside Vought Tower and something breaks in her. She's tried to be the good soup, the moral center, the one who pushes back against the worst excesses while staying inside the system. She told herself she could do more good working within Vought than against them. But watching innocent people get brutalized under legislation her company lobbied for, seeing fear replace hope in cities across America, she can't maintain the delusion anymore. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, to protect power and punish dissent. She makes a decision that will change everything. Late that night, she contacts T'Challa through Wakan, Dan channels she's spent weeks identifying. The message is simple. I know where Vought keeps the real Compound Phi research. The projects they don't admit exist. If you want to expose the full truth, I can help. It's treason by Vought standards. Career suicide at minimum. But she's finally choosing a side, and it's not the one paying her salary. T'Challa receives her message with cautious skepticism. This could be a trap. Vought attempting infiltration by sending a sympathetic insider who's actually loyal to the company. But his analysis of Starlight's history, the assaults she endured, the compromises she made, the gradual erosion of her idealism, suggests genuine disillusionment. More importantly, his strategic assessment concludes that Vought's hidden research programs could provide the final evidence needed to completely dismantle their operation. The data dumps exposed corruption and crime. But if he can prove Vought is conducting unauthorized human experimentation, creating enhanced individuals without consent, weaponizing Compound 5 in ways that violate international law, that's not scandal. That's criminal enterprise. That triggers international intervention, treaty violations, the kind of exposure that even bought politicians can't shield. The risk is worth it. He agrees to meet Starlight, but on his terms, in a location where her potential betrayal can't succeed. Wakandan technology versus Vought's best surveillance. He likes those odds. The meeting happens in an abandoned subway station, one of New York's ghost stations sealed off decades ago but still accessible through maintenance tunnels. Starlight arrives alone as instructed, and for the first time in months, she looks genuinely terrified, not of T'Challa, of what she's about to do. They'll know it was me eventually, she says, her voice echoing in the empty station. Once you use the information, they'll trace it back. I'll lose everything. T'Challa's response is measured. honest. You already lost everything. You simply haven't acknowledged it yet. They took your identity, your agency, your moral autonomy. What remains is a shell performing heroism while enabling atrocity. The words are brutal but true. Starlight flinches, then nods. She hands him an encrypted drive containing access codes, facility locations, personnel files, and research documentation from Vought's Black Site laboratories, places where they test compound V variants on homeless people bought from shelters, where they attempt to reverse engineer superpowers from dissected soups who outlived their usefulness, where they develop military applications that would make chemical weapons look humane, the kind of evidence that ends corporations and imprisons executives. But as T'Challa accepts the drive, alarms shriek through the abandoned station. Lights flood the darkness. Homelander descends through a shaft in the ceiling, and he's not alone. A train vibrates into position, blocking the north exit. The Deep, inexplicably, emerges from a maintenance tunnel to the south. Black Noir materializes from shadows like a darker reflection of T'Challa himself. They've been waiting, monitoring Starlight, using her as bait. She staggers back, realization and betrayal washing over her face. Ashley's voice crackles through speakers. "We've been reading your encrypted messages for weeks, Annie. Did you really think we trusted you after everything?" Starlight's face crumbles. The one act of defiance she thought was hers, the one moment of genuine heroism, and it was theater, orchestrated, allowed to happen so Vought could trap the one threat they couldn't control. Homelander smiles, and it's the smile of a man who's been given permission to hurt something. "You embarrassed me," he says to T'Challa, his voice eerily calm. "In front of the whole world. Made me bleed, made me look weak. I can't let that stand." His eyes start to glow. The other soups move into position, and T'Challa realizes this isn't a confrontation, it's an execution. The situation is tactical nightmare, enclosed space, multiple enhanced opponents, limited escape routes. Starlight is a compromised ally at best, a liability at worst. The encrypted drive in his possession is likely corrupted or tracked. Vought wouldn't hand over real evidence even as bait. Every advantage he possessed in Times Square, open space, civilian witnesses, legal ambiguity, has been stripped away. This is Vought's ground, their terms, their rules, and they've finally committed to what they should have done from the beginning: overwhelming force. Not trying to recruit him or contain him or manage him, but simply destroying him and any evidence of his existence. T'Challa's hand moves to his Kimoyo beads, activating distress protocols that will alert Wakanda to his situation. If he doesn't survive this, his people will know, will avenge him, will ensure his mission continues. But as the Seven advance from all sides, a darker realization settles over him. Perhaps this was inevitable. Perhaps a universe this corrupted simply cannot allow nobility to exist within it. Perhaps honor is a terminal diagnosis in a world where morality itself has been weaponized against the righteous. The first attack comes from three directions simultaneously: Homelander's heat vision, A-Train's supersonic charge, and Black Noir's silent blade work. They're coordinated, probably receiving tactical guidance through earpieces from Vought strategists watching via hidden cameras. But coordination against a superior opponent just means they all fail at the same time. T'Challa's suit explodes with stored kinetic energy. Every hit it's absorbed since arriving in this universe, every impact from Homelander's previous attacks, released in a purple shockwave that throws the soups backward like rag dolls. A-Train crashes through concrete walls. Black Noir tumbles into darkness. Homelander absorbs the blast and keeps coming, but the momentary disruption gives T'Challa the opening he needs. He's moving before the energy dissipates, vibranium claws extending, targeting not Homelander but the structural supports of this underground space. Wakandan engineering identified the weak points the moment he entered. If he can't win this fight, he'll change the battlefield. 3 precise strikes, and the ceiling begins to collapse. Homelander realizes the danger too late. He flies upward instinctively to avoid the falling concrete, and that's exactly what T'Challa wants: separation. Divide and conquer. The basic tactical principle that even children understand, but that gods forget because they've never needed strategy before. The Deep is already unconscious, taken out by falling debris he didn't have the speed to avoid. A-Train is fast, but not invulnerable. He's clutching his leg where rebar impaled him during the ceiling collapse. Black Noir is still a threat, emerging from rubble with that unnerving silence that suggests either professionalism or severe psychological damage. Probably both. He and T'Challa circle each other, two shadows in a collapsing tunnel, and there's almost respect in the moment. Black Noir moves like someone with training, unlike the other supes who rely on powers instead of skill. This will be a real fight. It lasts exactly 8 seconds. 8 seconds of blade work and counter-strikes before T'Challa identifies the pattern in Noir's technique. Military combatives, excellent but predictable, and exploits it with a nerve strike that drops the supe like a puppet with cut strings. Starlight is in shock, pressed against the wall, watching her entire worldview disintegrate. The Seven, the most powerful beings on the planet according to Vought's mythology, are being dismantled by one man. Not because he's stronger, but because he's better, smarter, trained instead of empowered. Everything Vought taught her about superhuman superiority is crumbling with the ceiling around her. T'Challa turns to her and his voice carries no anger despite her betrayal. They used you, as they use everyone. The question is whether you remain complicit or choose differently. It's an offer, redemption in the middle of chaos. She could help him, could use her powers to shift the odds, or she could retreat into the comfortable lie that working within the system can create change. Before she can answer, Homelander crashes back through the collapsed ceiling, concrete exploding around him, rage replacing strategy. He's not coordinating with his team anymore. This is personal, ego-driven, exactly the kind of emotional response that gets powerful people killed by weaker opponents who stay tactical. The battle escalates into something out of mythology: God versus king, alien power versus human excellence, raw strength versus refined technique. Homelander is holding back less now, unleashing attacks that could level buildings. T'Challa's suit absorbs what it can, but vibranium has limits. He's accumulating damage, internal injuries from impacts the armor can't fully distribute. This can't continue indefinitely. He needs an exit strategy. But Homelander isn't giving him space to disengage, pressing the attack with increasing desperation. Because somewhere beneath the narcissism and rage, Homelander understands that this matters. If he loses again, if he fails to kill this unknown threat, then his mythology is finished. Vought might keep him around as a weapon, but the worship, the adoration, the godhood he craves, all of it depends on proving he can beat this man. So he fights like his identity depends on it, because it does, and that makes him dangerous in ways that mere power never could. A train recovers enough to rejoin the fight, limping but fast, using hit-and-run tactics that force T'Challa to divide his attention. It's working. The tactical situation is deteriorating. Multiple enhanced opponents in enclosed space with limited mobility. This is how you beat a superior fighter. Overwhelm them. Prevent them from using skill by giving them too many threats to address simultaneously. T'Challa recognizes the shift, knows he's losing ground. His Wakandan training includes protocols for unwinnable scenarios. Rule 1. Survival supersedes victory. Rule 2. Retreat is not surrender. Rule 3. Today's defeat can become tomorrow's advantage if you survive to learn from it. He activates his suit's emergency systems, flooding the tunnel with electromagnetic pulse that shorts out Vought's surveillance, plunges everything into darkness, and most critically, disrupts A-Train's enhanced metabolism enough to slow him down. In the confusion, T'Challa moves, not fighting, not engaging, just moving with purpose toward an exit he mapped before the battle began. Starlight makes her choice in that darkness. She could illuminate the tunnel, give Homelander the advantage, prove her loyalty to Vought, or she could let the Panther escape. Let this one act of defiance actually mean something. The internal war lasts less than a second. Then she does nothing, stays dark, stays silent. Lets T'Challa disappear into the maintenance tunnels while Homelander screams in rage and A-Train stumbles blindly and Black Noir slowly regains consciousness. It's the smallest act of rebellion, barely qualifying as resistance. But it's hers, not monitored, not allowed, not part of their script for her. For the first time since joining the Seven, Annie January makes a choice that Vought didn't approve in advance. The feeling is terrifying and exhilarating and makes her want to vomit from anxiety. But she doesn't take it back, doesn't call out, doesn't betray him again. It's not redemption. It's not even close to redemption. But it's a start. And in a universe this dark, starts matter more than most people realize. T'Challa emerges from the tunnels 3 miles away, injured and exhausted but alive. His suit's diagnostics are alarming: structural integrity at 40%, kinetic absorption capacity depleted, 3 cracked ribs, internal bleeding that his enhanced physiology can heal but will take time. He's been in worse condition, but not often, and never when enemy territory with no immediate support. Wakandan extraction is 12 hours away minimum. His people can't simply invade American airspace without triggering international incidents. He's alone, wounded, being hunted by a corporation with infinite resources and government backing. Any rational assessment says he should abort the mission, retreat to Wakanda, and admit that some universes are too corrupted to save. But T'Challa isn't just a warrior. He's a king, and kings don't abandon people who need them, even when those people don't realize they need saving, even when they actively resist rescue, even when helping them might cost everything. So he finds a new safe house, tends his wounds, and begins planning the next move. Because the war isn't over. It's just entered a new phase. The turning point comes 48 hours later when a Vought-sponsored militia raids a community center in Brooklyn. They're hunting for T'Challa, acting on fabricated intelligence that he's hiding among the civilian population. The raid is brutal, militarized, designed to send a message. Harboring the foreign threat carries consequences. 23 people are detained. An elderly woman suffers a heart attack during the chaos. She survives, but barely. The community center is trashed, computers seized, records confiscated. Local news covers it as a successful anti-terrorism operation. National media praises Vought's vigilance. And the people in that neighborhood, predominantly black and brown, already over-policed, already suspicious of authority, don't blame Vought for the violence. They blame the Panther. Blame the unknown vigilante who brought this attention to their community. T'Challa watches footage of a teenager, maybe 16, being interviewed by reporters. "We don't need some foreign dude starting problems here. We got enough problems already." The words land like physical blows. He came to help, to expose corruption, to save people from a system devouring them, and now they hate him for it. This is the insidious genius of Vought's strategy. They're not just hunting T'Challa, they're making him radioactive, poisoning every community he might seek shelter in, turning potential allies into enemies through systematic terrorization. It's counterinsurgency doctrine perfected. You don't need to find the insurgent if you can make the population reject them first. Isolate the threat, cut off support networks, force them into desperation where mistakes happen. T'Challa recognizes the tactic because Wakanda studied these methods extensively. European colonizers used them for centuries. The British perfected it in Kenya during the Mau Mau uprising. The Americans deployed it in Vietnam and Iraq. Create collective punishment, make the population associate resistance with suffering. Eventually they police themselves. Eventually they beg for the oppressor to return because at least oppression is predictable. This universe didn't just corrupt its heroes, it corrupted the very concept of resistance itself, made rebellion too costly for anyone except those with nothing left to lose. The psychological toll on T'Challa is accumulating. He's been operating alone for weeks now, wounded, hunted, watching every attempt to help these people backfire into more oppression. The isolation is calculated. Vought K. Now's that even the strongest warrior breaks under sustained pressure. His Wakandan training includes protocols for surviving capture and torture, but nothing prepared him for this particular torment. Watching people you're trying to save reject you, blame you, beg for your surrender so their suffering will end. It would be easier if they were brainwashed or ignorant, but they're not. They're rational. From their perspective, life was hard before the Panther arrived. Exploitative, unjust, corrupt, but it was survivable. Now federal agents raid their neighborhoods. Now their families get detained. Now their existence becomes collateral damage in a war they never asked to fight. They're right to hate him. The tragedy is that they're right, and that correctness is exactly what Vought engineered. Okoye arrives on the third night, leading a small Dora Milaje unit through channels so covert that even American intelligence doesn't detect the insertion. She finds T'Challa in a condemned warehouse, tending wounds that should have been treated in Wakandan medical facilities days ago. Her assessment is immediate and brutal. "My king, this mission is unsustainable. You are injured, isolated, and every action you take generates more suffering for those you wish to help. Wakanda needs you alive more than this nation needs you dead." She's not wrong. A king's first responsibility is to his own people. Dying in a foreign land for citizens who despise you isn't martyrdom, it's negligence. T'Challa knows this, knows that continuing risks not just his life but Wakanda's stability. If he dies here, Shuri becomes queen unprepared. Wakanda's enemies will see vulnerability. His stubbornness could cost his nation everything. And yet he cannot abandon this. Cannot walk away knowing what Vought is, what they do, how they operate. Cannot let this universe's darkness win by default sim. Ply because fighting it is too hard. "If I leave," T'Challa says quietly, "Vought wins. Not just here, everywhere. They'll have proven that power without accountability is sustainable. That corporate fascism dressed as heroism can survive exposure. That truth doesn't matter as long as you control the narrative effectively enough." Okoye's response cuts through his rationalization. "And if you stay, if you continue this crusade and fail anyway, you will have sacrificed Wakanda's king for a mission that was doomed from the start." The argument is sound, tactical, the kind of wisdom that keeps nations alive when idealism would destroy them. But it's also the logic of surrender, the acceptance that some evils are too big to fight. T'Challa has built his entire reign on rejecting that premise, on believing that isolation and self-preservation, while safe, ultimately make you complicit in global injustice. Wakanda hid for centuries while the world burned. He opened the borders precisely because safety purchased through indifference to others' suffering isn't safety at all. It's moral cowardice wearing a crown. The debate is interrupted by alerts from Okoye's surveillance systems. Vought has located the warehouse. They're mobilizing everything. Not just the 7, but military contractors, federal agents, even local police convinced they're hunting a terrorist. The cordon is tightening. T'Challa has maybe 15 minutes before overwhelming force arrives. Okoye's tactical assessment is immediate. "We can extract you. The Talon fighter is 3 minutes out. Wakandan stealth technology will get us out before they arrive, but we must leave now." It's the moment of choice, escape and survive. Return to Wakanda, regroup, live to fight another day. Abandon this corrupted universe to its self-inflicted doom and focus on protecting his own people. It's the rational choice, the kingly choice. Or he can stay, make a stand, and force this confrontation to its conclusion, even knowing he might lose. Even knowing that losing means abandoning Wakanda, betraying his responsibilities, choosing strangers over his own people. It's the warrior's choice, the idealist's choice, the choice that gets kings killed and nations endangered, and it's the choice he makes. "Get the civilians out of the surrounding buildings," T'Challa orders. "I will buy you time, then extract without me." Okoye's face shows rare emotion, fear for her king, frustration at his stubbornness, and beneath it all, pride. Because this is who T'Challa is, who he's always been, the man who chooses principle over pragmatism, even when pragmatism is wiser. "My king," she starts, but he cuts her off with gentle finality. "That is an order, General. Wakanda needs its Dora Milaje. It can replace a king." The lie is obvious. Succession crises destabilize nations, and Wakanda's enemies will absolutely exploit his death. But Okoye recognizes the tone. He's made his choice. Her role now is to minimize the damage. She salutes, Wakandan style, fist across chest. Then she's gone, disappearing with her unit to evacuate innocents from what's about to become a war zone, leaving T'Challa alone. Again. But this time, the isolation is chosen, accepted, almost welcomed. Because sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to play by the enemy's rules. And if that means dying on principle in a universe that's forgotten what principles are, then so be it. The final battle lasts 4 minutes and 17 seconds. That's all the time it takes for Vought's assembled force to overwhelm one injured king in a collapsing warehouse. Homelander arrives first, crashing through the roof with heat vision already firing. T'Challa dodges, counters, fights with every technique 5,000 years of Wakandan martial tradition can offer. He takes down 3 federal agents with nerve strikes, disables A-Train with a vibranium-enhanced kick that shatters the speedster's kneecap, even manages to draw blood from Homelander again with claws that find the same spot he struck in Times Square. But there are too many of them. Black Noir recovers from their previous encounter and attacks from behind. Starlight. They brought Starlight, forced her to choose sides publicly this time, hits him with concentrated light energy that his depleted suit can barely absorb. The Deep is useless as always, but his presence adds to the overwhelming numbers. T'Challa fights brilliantly, fights nobly, fights like a warrior king who knows he's already lost but refuses to make it easy. And then Homelander gets a clean hit. Full strength, center mass. The vibranium suit cracks. Everything slows after that impact. T'Challa can feel his ribs breaking, organs rupturing, the kind of damage even the heart-shaped herb's enhancement can't quickly heal. He hits the warehouse wall hard enough to leave an impression in concrete. Blood fills his mouth, his vision blurs. Through failing eyes, he watches Homelander land in front of him, that dead-eyed smile finally triumphant. "Not so tough now, are you?" the Soup says, and there's genuine pleasure in his voice. The plea, sure of a damaged child who's finally won a game he was losing. T'Challa tries to stand, manages to get one knee under him before collapsing again. His suit's systems are shutting down, emergency protocols activating to preserve critical data rather than his life. Somewhere distant, he hears Okoye screaming into comms, the Talon fighter racing back despite his orders. She won't make it in time. He knows this, accepts this. His only regret is what his death will cost Wakanda, what his sister will carry, the instability his stubbornness created. A king's duty is to his people, and he failed them for principle. Maybe Okoye was right. Maybe some universes are simply beyond saving. Homelander's fist is pulling back for the killing blow when Starlight does something unexpected. She steps between them, not aggressively, not heroically, just there, blocking the execution. "That's enough," she says, her voice shaking but determined. "He's done. It's over. You won." Homelander's eyes narrow, heat vision charging. "Move, Annie. Don't make me." But she doesn't move, doesn't attack, just stands there, and something in her eyes communicates that if Homelander kills T'Challa, he'll have to kill her too. In front of all these cameras, all these federal witnesses, he'll have to murder another member of the Seven. The calculation flashes across his face. He wants to, desperately wants to end the Panther permanently, but Ashley's voice crackles through his earpiece, urgent. "Alive is better. Alive we can control the narrative. Dead makes him a martyr." The logic penetrates his rage. Slowly, reluctantly, the glow fades from his eyes. He steps back. And T'Challa, bleeding and broken on the warehouse floor, understands the final cruelty. They're not going to kill him. They're going to make him disappear. The arrest is televised. Federal agents hauling the dangerous foreign operative into custody. Media coverage praises Vought's heroes for their restraint, their professionalism, their commitment to justice over vengeance. The narrative is already being written. T'Challa was a terrorist, an agent of a hostile foreign power who attempted to destabilize American institutions through violence and disinformation. His leaks? Russian-style propaganda mixed with doctored evidence. His attacks on the Seven? Unprovoked aggression against peaceful heroes trying to protect their country. The footage from Times Square is recontextualized. Homelander was defending himself against an armed attacker. The Times Square defeat is memory hold, replaced with this new story of capture and justice served. Within 24 hours, public opinion completes its reversal. T'Challa goes from whistleblower to villain in the span of a single news cycle, and the population accepts it, welcomes it even, because this version of events is more comfortable than acknowledging that their heroes are monsters and their institutions are corrupt beyond redemption. T'Challa is held in a black site facility that officially doesn't exist. No trial, no charges, no due process. Just indefinite detention under national security provisions that allow the government to disappear people who threaten the status quo. They don't torture him. His Wakandan physiology makes that pointless anyway, but they study him. Vought scientists analyze his suit, his biology, trying to reverse engineer vibranium technology they can't comprehend. Federal interrogators question him about Wakanda's location, its resources, its weaknesses. He tells them nothing. Not from defiance, but from duty. A king protects his people even in captivity, especially in captivity. Days blur into weeks. His injuries heal slowly without proper treatment. He meditates, maintains his discipline, refuses to break. But isolation grinds down even the strongest mind. In the darkness of his cell, T'Challa wonders if this is how it ends. Not with noble sacrifice or meaningful victory, but with slow erasure. Forgotten in a cage while Vought continues destroying everything he tried to save. The universe's final joke, honor doesn't just lose. It gets buried so deep that no one remembers it existed. But outside those prison walls, something is shifting. Not revolution. This population is too conditioned for that. But cracks. Small fractures in Vought's facade. Starlight's intervention got caught on dozens of phones, and while official media ignores it, social media doesn't. People are asking questions. Why did she protect him? What does she know that we don't? The leaked documents resurface periodically, shared through encrypted channels Vought can't completely suppress. Activists reference them. Journalists investigate leads. Congressional representatives, the few not entirely bought, start demanding oversight. It's not enough. Not nearly enough. Vought's power remains essentially intact. Homelander still flies free. The Seven still operate with impunity. But the absolute certainty that existed before T'Challa arrived, that's damaged. And in a system built on unquestioned authority, even small doubts can metastasize. The Panther failed to save this universe, but he succeeded in proving it could bleed, that the Empire was vincible, that resistance, while costly, was possible. Seeds planted in poisoned soil sometimes grow into something the gardener never intended. Wakanda's response is measured, strategic, and utterly ruthless. They don't invade, don't threaten, don't make demands. They simply withdraw. Wakandan technology that was beginning to be shared with the world, cancer treatments, clean energy innovations, agricultural advancements, is pulled back behind the barrier. International partnerships dissolve overnight. Wakanda returns to isolation, but this time it's not hiding. It's watching, evaluating, demonstrating to the world that they could have helped, would have helped, but the cost of engaging with this corrupted global system is unacceptable. Nations that benefited from Wakandan generosity suddenly lose access to resources they'd started depending on. Pharmaceutical companies see miracle cures vanish from their research pipelines. Tech firms lose consultants who were advancing their capabilities by decades. And when international leaders demand explanation, Wakanda's response is simple. You imprisoned our king. Consider partnerships terminated. It's so, FT power as weapon. The reminder that isolationism isn't weakness when you possess technology and resources others desperately need. Vought won the battle, but Wakanda is positioning to win a much longer war. The final scene is T'Challa in his cell, exactly 93 days after his capture. His beard has grown. His body has healed but carries scars vibranium armor couldn't prevent. He's meditating in darkness when the wall explodes inward. Not Wakandan rescue, something else, something worse. Soldier Boy stands in the breach, that sociopathic grin visible even in the dim light. Behind him, figures in suits, not Vought personnel. Someone else. Heard you're tough to kill, Soldier Boy says, cracking his knuckles. My new employers want to test that personally. They're very interested in vibranium and Wakanda. And what makes a king break? T'Challa rises slowly, assumes a fighting stance despite exhaustion and injury. Because this is the truth of this universe. There is no bottom, no point where the corruption stops, just new horrors waiting beneath old ones. Vought was never the only monster, just the most visible. And now he's being transferred from one nightmare to another, an asset to be exploited by whatever shadow organization operates in spaces even darker than Vought Tower. He could have stayed in Wakanda, could have lived, could have ruled and protected his people and let this universe devour itself. Instead, he chose honor. And honor in a universe like this doesn't get rewarded. It gets punished. Forever. In a world where monsters wear capes, the most dangerous thing was a man who still believed in honor. The question that remains, buried in a cell, forgotten by the people he tried to save, awaiting torments worse than death, is whether believing was enough, or whether some universes are simply too broken to deserve kings. And was T'Challa right to intervene, or did his honor doom him for nothing? Could nobility survive in the boy's universe, or was this outcome inevitable? Drop your thoughts below.